Kevin Hunter is out here claiming he protected Wendy Williams from the Carters, that Jay-Z and Beyonce used their industry muscle to silence her, that he was the man standing between Wendy and the most powerful couple in entertainment, absorbing pressure so she could keep doing her show.
You would know, I've never partied with them. I've never been to their house. I don't swim in their pool. Like, we're not friends. I'm a pop culture pundit and commentator, right? That's what you call it. Pop culture woman. And I talk about people.
And he wants the public to believe this story now, right now, specifically, while his $250 million lawsuit just got thrown out of court, while his alimony checks have been gone for years, while he is reportedly facing foreclosure and cannot pay his car insurance on the luxury vehicles he used to maintain on Wendy's dime.
That it was not till death do us part.
And it wasn't just an incident. I mean, the relationship that Kevin had with this woman went on for...
No. Kevin was a serial cheater. Kevin had different mistresses depending on, the part of his life. This last one was the one that he had the longest term relationship with.
My situation over the 12 years that I've been here entertaining you on television. Welcome to Hot Topics, Sharina Hudson. Getting out of my car with my money. Oh. Good morning, Journey. She'll be I think she'll be 3 next month, don't you know? Good morning, Kelvin.
Kevin Hunter, as Wendy Williams' protector. That is the narrative he is selling. And the timing of it tells you everything you need to know about why he is selling it. But here is the thing that makes this complicated, and the reason this story deserves more than a simple dismissal. Because underneath Kevin's transparent self-interest, underneath the obvious financial motivation for suddenly becoming a whistleblower, there is a version of what he is describing that is entirely consistent with how the Carter machine has operated for years. Wendy Williams spent over a decade saying things about Jay-Z and Beyonce on live television that nobody else in that media landscape was willing to say.
She's a real looker, and she's a great singer, but she speaks the Ebonics, and that might not be good for...
She was relentless, she was specific, and she was reaching millions of people every morning. The idea that there were no consequences for that the most powerful couple in the music industry simply absorbed years of daily coverage and never pushed back through any of the industry channels available to them, is harder to believe than the alternative. So the question is not whether the Carters had motivation to silence Wendy. They absolutely did.
That people play around with pregnancy. I've had so many miscarriages, and I beg God so much for my own. I just don't like to... And, all right, here's some alleged conspiracy theories. Number 1, the baby is helping Beyonce's sagging.
The question is whether Kevin Hunter is the right person to be telling that story, whether his account is trustworthy given everything he has done, and whether his sudden emergence as Wendy's protector is about her or about the money he has been trying to recover since the checks stopped coming. To understand why Wendy was such a specific problem for the Carters, you have to go back through what she actually said about them across the years she was on air. Because it was not occasional shade or passing commentary. It was a sustained, detailed, daily engagement with every piece of their mythology that she found unconvincing. The baby bump was the most visible flashpoint.
They're adopting, but they're gonna play it off like it's allegedly, like they gave birth. I don't know, but okay, you remember I was the first one to say this. And you remember, because wait, I haven't said it yet. Watch. It's gonna be an at-home water birth in the master bathroom. There are gonna be 3 people there. Beyonce, Jay-Z, and her mother.
Before Beyonce even made the official announcement, Wendy was on air speculating about the nature of the pregnancy, suggesting the whole thing was being managed and manipulated for media purposes, that the bump was not what it appeared, that the announcement was timed to coincide with promotional activity. She ran experiments on her show testing whether a silicone bump could produce the same visual effect as what cameras had captured. She was specific, she was visual, and she was reaching her audience at 10 a.m. every morning while the story was still developing. And when the backlash came, and it did come, Wendy noted on air that she was the only one absorbing it, despite the fact that she was far from the only person raising those questions publicly. She covered the Lemonade era with the same depth, analyzing the Becky with the good hair narrative, naming fashion designer Rachel Roy as the primary candidate in public conversation for who Jay-Z had been involved with, and walking her audience through the imagery and the lyrics with the specific energy of someone who had been following this couple's public and private dynamics for years and was not going to pretend she had not been. She went after Beyonce's speaking voice repeatedly, saying she sounded like she had a 5th grade education, that she needed elocution lessons, that her vocal style in interviews was something that required work. She suggested Beyonce should have been passed over for a role in favor of Alicia Keys. She covered the plagiarism allegations, the Desiree lawsuit over Kissing You, the Jennifer Armour lawsuit over Baby Boy, the filmmaker who claimed Lemonade lifted from his work, with the receipts laid out on her desk, treating each allegation as part of a documented pattern rather than an isolated incident. She talked about the Jay-Z paternity allegations. She discussed Kelly Rowland's complicated feelings about Beyonce's success. She covered Tina Knowles' relationship with Richard Lawson and Beyonce's alleged discomfort with it. She said Beyonce's personal social media content was staged and managed by publicists rather than genuine. None of this was off the record or buried in a podcast with limited reach. This was national syndicated daytime television every morning for years. The Carters had every reason to want it stopped and every tool available to them in the industry to make stopping it worth someone's while. Reports have surfaced that Roc Nation issued cease and desist communications regarding Wendy's coverage of the Jay-Z paternity allegations specifically. That is documented pressure, legal instruments deployed to restrict what a media personality could say about a public figure. Whether that pressure extended further, whether it went beyond legal letters into the informal industry leverage that powerful management operations routinely apply through relationships with networks, advertisers, and production companies. That is the territory Kevin is now claiming to have personal knowledge of. And that is where his credibility problem becomes impossible to separate from the substance of what he is saying, because Kevin Hunter is not a neutral witness to anything involving Wendy Williams. He is a man who spent over 12 years as her manager and husband, while simultaneously maintaining a long-term relationship with another woman, funding that relationship with Wendy's income, and apparently planning to live on her alimony indefinitely after their divorce. He filed a lawsuit to reopen the divorce, claiming she had hidden $48 million from him. He filed a separate $250 million suit against her guardians and Wells Fargo, framing himself as a defender of her constitutional rights. While the people closest to Wendy made clear they believed he had no standing and no genuine interest in her well-being, he demanded in court filings that Wendy appear in court herself, a woman whose health had been central to the entire guardianship situation, as a litigation strategy rather than out of any evident concern for her. Wendy herself, in a call to TMZ Live in late 2025, described Kevin with the specific economy of someone who has spent years watching a person's patterns and no longer has any patience for their theater. She called him a money grabber. She said he had always been that way. She was not buying the protector narrative. And she knows him better than anyone. There is also the darker layer underneath all of this. The allegations that have circulated about Kevin's own role in what happened to Wendy. Because the story of the Carters silencing her exists alongside a separate and equally disturbing story about what was happening inside her own production. Reports have claimed that Kevin, aware that Wendy was planning to leave television and return to radio after their divorce, worked with people inside the production to keep her medicated. Just enough to function, just enough to keep showing up and doing the show, not enough to be fully herself. The mechanism allegedly used was her daily tea. The goal was to keep her dependent and working for as long as the arrangement could be sustained, and then to discard her when it no longer could. If that account is accurate, and it has been circulating long enough and with enough specific detail that it cannot simply be dismissed, then Kevin Hunter was not standing between Wendy and the people who wanted to silence her. He was one of the people silencing her from the inside through chemical means, using her own daily ritual against her while presenting himself to the outside world as her manager and support. That context makes his current Carter narrative not just suspicious, but almost grotesque. The man who allegedly kept his wife medicated to prevent her from making her own career decisions is now positioning himself as the person who protected her from industry pressure. The man who spent her money on another woman for over a decade is now presenting himself as the one who absorbed the consequences of her bravery. The man whose alimony checks stopped when her show ended is now speaking up about what silenced her show. Years after it ended, months after his latest legal attempt to extract money from her situation was rejected by the courts. The timing is not subtle. It is not meant to be. Kevin Hunter is a man who has exhausted his legitimate legal options and is now trying to build a narrative that keeps him relevant, keeps people talking about him, and perhaps creates a path back to Wendy's financial orbit through a different route than the ones the courts have closed. If he can position himself as the person who has information about what was done to Wendy, information that Wendy's audience cares deeply about, information that connects to the post-Diddy conversation about industry power and the silencing of women, then he becomes a figure worth paying attention to, worth interviewing, worth platforming, worth potentially compensating for the story he is carrying. Whether any of what he is claiming about the Carters is true is genuinely unknowable from the outside. What is knowable is that the Carters had the motivation, the resources, and the documented willingness to apply industry pressure in the direction of people who covered them in ways they found threatening. Roc Nation's legal apparatus is real. Jay-Z's relationships with network executives, advertisers, and the infrastructure of the entertainment industry are documented. The informal power that comes from being at the apex of that industry for 20 years, the ability to make calls, to signal preferences, to have your interests understood and accommodated without ever issuing a direct order, is real, and it is how that world operates. Wendy Williams talked about the Carters every day for years. Her show ended. Her guardianship restricted her autonomy and her access to her own finances for years afterward. The independent assessment that eventually confirmed she never had dementia raises significant questions about the basis on which that guardianship was established and maintained. And now her ex-husband, who has every financial incentive to be talking right now, is claiming the Carters were part of the machinery that took her down. The story is real. The witness is compromised. And those two things are both true at the same time. What Wendy Williams deserves, what she has deserved throughout all of this, is a full accounting of what was done to her that does not root through the self-interest of the people who had the most to gain from her being kept quiet. Kevin Hunter is not that accounting. He is a man using her story to serve himself, the same way he used her income to serve himself for over a decade. The fact that some of what he is saying may be true does not make him a reliable narrator of her experience. It makes him a useful source of information that needs to be held at arm's length and examined against everything else that is known about what happened to her. Wendy called him a money grabber. She said he had always been that way. She's right about that. The same way she was right about the baby bump. Right about Becky with the good hair. Right about the patterns she identified in people's behavior before anyone else was willing to say them out loud. She has always been right about the things that mattered. And the people who needed her to stop being right about them found ways, through various channels and various instruments, to make her stop. That is the story. Kevin Hunter is not the hero of it. He is one of its villains, now trying to repurpose himself as its narrator because the villain's revenue stream has dried up and the narrative market is the only one still open to him. The broader context that makes all of this land differently right now than it would have 5 years ago is the post-Diddy environment and what it has done to the public's willingness to believe that entertainment industry power operates in exactly the ways that seemed like conspiracy theory before the indictment. Before Diddy's arrest, before the federal racketeering case laid out in specific documented detail how the most powerful figures in the industry coordinated to protect their interests and silence their threats, the story of the Carters using industry leverage to manage what a daytime host said about them would have been received primarily as paranoia. After Diddy, it reads as business as usual. That is the specific shift that Kevin Hunter is trying to exploit. He is not stupid. He understands that the cultural moment has created an audience primed to believe that powerful entertainment figures do exactly the things he is now describing. He is packaging his claims inside a framework that the post-Diddy conversation has made credible in the broad strokes, counting on that broad credibility to extend to his specific account, even though his specific account comes from a source with every conceivable financial motivation to be manufacturing drama right now. The Carters' management infrastructure is real. Roc Nation's legal and PR operation is one of the most sophisticated in the industry. Jay-Z's documented relationships with network executives, with the advertising community, with the legal apparatus that entertainment companies rely on, all of that is real and documented and represents exactly the kind of informal power that does not need to issue explicit instructions to produce results. A call from the right person to the right person, a preference made known in the right room, a legal letter sent to a network's counsel, none of that requires a conspiracy. It just requires the kind of relationships that come from spending 2 decades at the top of an industry where everyone knows everyone and everyone understands what certain communications mean without them having to be spelled out. Wendy's willingness to go after the Carters daily with documentation and specificity and the reach of a nationally syndicated program was a specific and sustained problem for people who have demonstrated they take media coverage of themselves seriously. The cease and desist over the paternity allegations is evidence that the legal tools were deployed. Whether the informal tools were also deployed, whether the relationships and the leverage and the specific power that comes from being Jay-Z were also brought to bear, is what Kevin is now claiming firsthand knowledge of. And the problem is that his firsthand knowledge of anything involving Wendy is permanently contaminated by what he did with his position of trust. He was her manager. He had access to her finances, her relationships, her health information, her professional decisions. He used that access for over a decade to serve his own interests at her direct expense. Whatever he witnessed, whatever he knows, whatever he saw happening between the Carter machine and the people around Wendy's show, his account of it arrives through the filter of a man who was simultaneously doing his own damage to the person he is now claiming to have been protecting. The people around Wendy who have maintained consistent credibility throughout this entire story have never been Kevin Hunter. They have been the friends and former colleagues who spoke up during the guardianship about what they witnessed, who raised questions about the basis for the medical assessment, who made clear that the woman being described as incapacitated was not the Wendy they knew. Those accounts, from people without financial stakes in the outcome, carry weight that Kevin's cannot. What Wendy herself said, calling him a money grabber, saying he had always been that way, is the only characterization of Kevin Hunter that comes from someone with complete first-hand knowledge and no financial incentive to protect him. She knows him. She knows what he did. She knows what he is doing now. And her assessment was not ambiguous. There is something almost poetic about the specific position Kevin Hunter now occupies. He spent years as the person between Wendy and the world, her manager, her husband, the gatekeeper of her professional relationships and her personal life. He used that position to take from her in ways that are now documented in court filings and public record. And now, stripped of that position, stripped of the income it generated, stripped of the legal avenues he tried to use to restore it, he is trying to reassemble some version of the access he used to have by presenting himself as the keeper of her story. He is not the keeper of her story. He is a chapter in it, one of the less flattering ones. Wendy Williams' story, the full version, the one that accounts for what she built and what was done to her, and how she has navigated 20-plus years of an industry that has never quite known what to do with someone who refuses to be managed, is a story that deserves to be told on her terms, in her voice, with her as its subject rather than its object. The guardianship, whatever its basis and whatever its intentions, took that from her for years. Kevin Hunter's narrative, whatever its content, is another attempt to take it from her by making him the source of the most consequential claims about her experience. She called him a money grabber on live television. She said he had always been that way. That is Wendy Williams telling her own story in the clearest possible terms about the man who is now claiming to be her protector. The audience that has followed her through all of this, through the health challenges and the guardianship and the canceled show and the replacement and the lawsuits, knows Wendy well enough to hear what she is saying. They are not buying the protector narrative either. And if Kevin Hunter thought that the post-Diddy moment had created enough appetite for industry exposure stories that his specific credibility problems would be overlooked, he may be discovering that Wendy's audience is more discerning than that calculation assumed. What the audience wants, what they have always wanted, is the full truth about what happened to Wendy Williams from a source that does not have a financial stake in controlling the narrative. That source has not yet fully emerged. The independent medical assessment is a piece of it. The court filings are pieces of it. Wendy's own voice, when she has been able to use it freely, is the most important piece of it. But the complete picture, who did what, who knew what, who made which decisions at which moments, has not yet been assembled in any forum that required complete honesty under conditions where evasion was not an option. Until that accounting happens, the space is going to be filled by people like Kevin Hunter, who have fragments of information and overwhelming incentives to use those fragments in whatever configuration best serves their immediate needs. The Carters will stay silent, because silence has always been their most effective tool for managing coverage they do not like. The people around the guardianship will stay protected behind the legal settlements that close those proceedings, and Kevin will keep talking, because talking is the only card he has left. Wendy Williams deserves better than this as the state of her story. And the people who have followed her through everything believe, based on everything she has demonstrated about who she is, that she is still capable of telling it herself, on her own terms, in her own voice, from her own chair. That chair is reportedly being rebuilt for her return. When she sits back down in it, the questions Kevin Hunter is trying to answer for her are the first ones she should be asked, and she should be the one answering them. So here is the full picture. Wendy Williams spent years saying things about Jay-Z and Beyonce that nobody else in daytime television was willing to say, with documentation, with receipts, with the specific tenacity of someone who believed her audience deserved the truth regardless of whose feelings it bruised. The evidence that there was industry-level pushback against that coverage is documented. Cease and desist communications exist in the public record. Whether that pushback extended to the guardianship situation, to the production, to the people around Wendy who were supposed to be protecting her interests, those questions have never been fully answered. Kevin Hunter now claims to have answers. But Kevin Hunter also has a foreclosure problem and a $250 million lawsuit that got thrown out and a daughter whose child support he reportedly is not paying. He has every incentive in the world to be talking right now and a track record of self-interest that makes trusting what he says about Wendy genuinely difficult. Do you believe there is real substance to Kevin's claims about the Carters? Or is this purely a money grab dressed up as a revelation? And does the documented history of what was said about Wendy on her own show, combined with the Carters' known willingness to apply industry pressure, make the broad outlines of his claim more credible than his personal credibility would normally allow? Drop everything you're thinking in the comments, hit that like and subscribe. Because this story has layers that are still being uncovered, and we are going to be here for every one of them.